Notre Dame took to the grass at the far east end of the Irish Athletics Complex today in preparation for season opener at Miami, now 25 days away. I'm Tim O'Malley with Tim Prister of Irish Illustrated. We split the offense and defense today. Tim, we're going to start with you. You're at the defensive side of the ball. There was a notable absence that's been cleared up, so I think we should start our video with that as well.
Yeah, I had to start the defensive practice report with the fact that Gabe Rubio was not out there. We looked around, many media outlets looked for him, spoke with Al Washington after practice. And he said there was nothing to worry about. He didn't specify what it was. Could be sickness, could be a minor injury. I don't know. But he said he was fine, and so that's good enough for me. That's a big relief because Gabe Rubio being injured really early. Heck, he had suffered an injury prior to this at the beginning of last year's preseason practice, but good to go, Gabe Rubio.
Offense, Jaden Greathouse was not in the mix today. He was at practice wearing a jersey and shorts and intermingling with his teammates. We were only inside for 20 minutes to clarify, but there's one more clarification that's important. The wording of it is different. No one that would play Notre Dame football on Saturday was out today for any reason that would keep them out of a game. That is the final word there. I did not see Kedron Young, however, at practice today, and I don't believe any other media outlet did. Of course, there are very minor injuries and things that can happen at this time, and you just get treatment instead of going out there. But offensively, today, I thought it was interesting to be able to watch Mike Denbrock run skeleton with 4 quarterbacks simultaneously and 4 players in the formation. Sometimes he would bring in a 5th, Tyler Buckner, and they would all throw the football at the same time, which makes it hard for me to know who was repping first because they were doing it simultaneously. But if you want to picture it, you have 2 receivers on the right, 2 receivers on the left, and a running back. And at the snap, they're all running their goal-to-go routes. It was clearly passing only, so maybe 3rd and goal at the 7, 3rd and goal at the 8 reps. And to see them go through it, I was struck by Micah Gilbert looks more polished than at any point last year, where I thought he actually struggled just to catch the ball a little bit in August last year. Don't think this means much. He was the first receiver to come out. The only reason I point that out is for the W, it was Micah Gilbert, Eli Raridan, Jordan Faison, and Will Pauling, and those were the other first receivers you would expect.
Well, that's good to hear because Micah Gilbert needs to be in the mix. I was on the defensive side of the ball. Because they were on the grass field, everything was spread out. We only have 20 minutes, so it was difficult to focus in on one group, so I chose the defensive line. It was interesting to see, it's in my practice report about Max Bulla looking at the new tackling dummy out there with some adornment to it. And while they were still stretching, while they're still stretching it, you could see that Bulla is trying to figure out, if I had to tackle this, how would I approach it? And then I actually walked up to him and said, trying to figure out how you're going to tell them to tackle it. He said, yeah, I was just trying to figure it all out. So it was kind of interesting to see that. But I focused on the defensive line with Al Washington, and my goodness, I mean, Bryce Young is just so impressive. The first thing I thought of was a monstrous power forward for the Kentucky basketball team. That's what he looks like out there. No, the Kentucky basketball teams, the great Kentucky basketball teams of past. I mean, he's so impressive. And then you heard the commentary. Coach Codlin, who you commented about the other day, that is one animated dude on the practice field. He is the assistant to assistant coach Al Washington. And, a lot of praise out there, a lot of correction for a guy like Chris Burgess, who's going through it for the first time. I'm still trying to figure out what position Cole Mullins is playing, which we can't quite figure out, but I like him. Bryce Young, Junior Tui Alamaka. You can always count on Junior being letter perfect in terms of technique, and Coach Codlin pointed that out. So just that stuff along the way. I saw the linebackers. I think we have more to talk about with the interviews that we conducted, but just watching the linebackers, we were impressed when Max Bulla said in the spring that Bodie Cahoon was the guy with the most burst, the most quickness from breaking on a would-be tackle. And you can see he's really thick lower body, and you can see that's where all of his power comes from. But, as it relates to interviews, we bounced around. I know that you have some stuff on left and right defensive end. Tim, why don't you jump into that?
Yeah, we'll start with Al Washington before he popped over to the offense at all. I asked Josh Burnham kind of the advantages of left and right, and I think he realized that he kind of feels like I don't want to give away anything schematically of that, but he is a guy that played both, so I pressed him on a little bit. He's like, yeah, there are different skill sets involved, and when I clarify with Al Washington, the key is, look, there's still a boundary in a field. You still snap the ball on the near or the far hash in college football. It's not like you can just say this is left and this is right.
They have to play both.
They have to play both, but they have the ends that can play both. And Al cleaned it up a little bit today. Coach Washington said, look, the body types are closer than they've ever been at any point when I was here. Like, I can't imagine, personally, he didn't coach Khalid Kareem, but I can't imagine Khalid Kareem playing boundary and Julian Aquara going to the field because you have to line up on that side. But they're able to use left and right now, and he made one other point I really hadn't thought of. late in the game when we need our 2 best out there, we just put them at left and right. We don't have to worry about substituting a boundary and field. So that's the tweak that Chris
and that'll be an interesting
yeah.
thing to look for when the games start. That's really interesting stuff. I spent some time with Billy Schrouth, who you and I both agree.
He's fun.
He's one of the. He's just one of the more impressive guys to deal with. He's cordial with the media.
Yeah.
Most of these guys are, of course. But there was some commentary about guys submitting their name for captainship. Right. Schrouth did it last year. Craig did it last year. I'm sure they will again this year. I didn't really get a chance to catch up with Emil Wagner. He was in the interview room, but I'm sure he will as well.
I think all those senior linemen that start.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, generally, they just pick one offensive lineman, so it'll come down to that. But, those guys are all in an absolute leadership role. Jumping back to Al Washington, he was asked about having 22 defensive linemen on the roster, and he said, our philosophy is we're going to come at teams in waves. And he says the players understand, at least that's the way he says it, they understand that, you get 4 or 5 snaps or 7 snaps, and the next series somebody else is going to go in. And he really feels that is, part of the power that they have, and that it benefited them over the long season last year with 16 games. It was great to have that developed depth as you went through the playoffs.
And he mentioned he figured 6 ends, and you'd like to see 6 tackles inside. I will warn everybody on one thing. There's a dichotomy here. Miami's going to be so hot and humid. A&M's going to be so hot and humid. You go back to A&M last year, they played 19 guys on defense. You go up to the next game, they wanted to play more against Northern Illinois. They could only play 20. He doesn't rotate as much when it's close against a really good team as he means during the season, I think. You're not going to see 12 defensive linemen play every single game, but the fact that they can rotate 12 in and not have a drop-off during the season they've really built that unit up.
Yeah. Talking to Joe Rudolph, some really interesting stuff right at the end, because he was asked about the Joe Moore Award, and I talked to Schrouth about that, and he absolutely believes that they can be a contender for that. He's not putting a whole lot of emphasis on it. It's day 6, and it's more important to be better on day 7 than day 6, so there's not a whole lot of emphasis on that. But Joe Rudolph talked about the first thing he does when preseason practice starts is he puts on video for the offensive linemen of Joe Moore and Harry Heastand. The award's named after Joe Moore. I had an opportunity, fortunate enough in my career, to stand about from here 50 feet away and listen to Joe Moore coach on a daily basis. I mean, you want to talk about a learning experience, that was it. So, Joe Rudolph, a big believer in Joe Moore. Harry Heastand, a big believer in Joe Moore. So it's all part of the program, and remains a big part of the program.
Offensively, I did begin watching the offensive line, and they did not align in 5, but they did the next best thing. They aligned in 2 on the left, 2 on the right, and the centers were by themselves, so you could figure it out pretty easily. No surprise on the left, of course, where you have Anthony Knapp and Billy Schrouth. On the right, it was Chris Terek and Emil Wagner. Sullivan Absher appeared to only take, I wouldn't say I guess mental reps is the best way to do it. He was in full uniform. We only saw the first 4 periods, so I think Terek was in for him. Obviously, Absher's nursing something where he was only taking mental reps. And so you can figure out now the centers, of course, up front, they were working a little bit on just a drill where they got to stay low and then pop up and be able to see. I kept hearing eyes, eyes, eyes. And actually, Charles Jagasa was helping them, kind of tutoring there, I think, just as kind of a leader, helping out the centers. But it was, of course, Ashton Craig, Joe Otting, and then Cam Herron, the freshman. So the backups, not that this is something, you can read this, of course, on IrishIllustrated.com, but I guess the main surprise for me was Chris Terek was the first right guard in, but it shouldn't be, because all last year he was on the depth chart.
Yeah.
He had to do something right to be on the depth chart.
And he was listed at 330 in spring. He's down to 320, so he's got a little bit more mobility. Getting back to the offensive line, specifically the tackles, we were talking with Joe Rudolph about Emil Wagner and what he did against Abdul Carter in the Orange Bowl. That seems to it has raised Emil Wagner's profile, I think, in the NFL as he looks forward to the NFL. That's a great sign. And Joe Rudolph talking about Anthony Knapp, and I guess this shouldn't surprise us because he started as a true freshman, but he said, it wasn't only me that noticed Anthony Knapp. It was the rest of the coaching staff on both sides of the ball and the head coach as well. He said Anthony Knapp tests better than any of the other offensive linemen, or at least the offensive tackles. In retrospect, now you look back, and it's no surprise that Anthony Knapp was a 15-game starter.
Drew Mentok pointed out that when he saw the freaks list, that it was, of course, Bryce Young, who we would all guess, and Eli Raridan. When you watch him play basketball, you know that. The other guy that was named was Anthony Knapp. I mean, he made special. Right. Whoever sent that in from Notre Dame, whether it was Lando or anyone else, said, I also want to mention Anthony Knapp tests better than all of our linemen, and they listed him as well. And yeah, he obviously, if you're going to be a little undersized, you have to be a great athlete and have some rare strength.
And he's up over 300 now, so he's not really undersized anymore for a tackle.
Right. So it's a that, and the one other thing I want to throw in there that Rudolph said was, look, you always want to have the same 5 go out there all the time. That's unrealistic. We're not always going to have the same 5 go out there. We have to adjust. We have to adapt. He started 10 guys last year. Or 10 guys played major roles. I don't know if Tosh Baker technically started, but he played 10 guys last year.
I mean, it's
when you're in a
one thing
playoff game in the first quarter, you started. That's how it works.
I mean, it's one thing when you have 7 or 8, but when it's 10, that's outrageous. But a testament to Joe Rudolph and the culture of Notre Dame's offensive line that they could play in the national championship game with all of those injuries.
We'll be back here over the weekend. Until then, our practice reports are already up, and we will have a podcast on Thursday, Irish Illustrated Insider. Until then, thanks for watching. For Tim Priester, I'm Tim O'Malley. This is Irish Illustrated Instant Analysis.